My name is Jessica, and I'm 28 years old. I have a story about the day my mother told me I was too independent to deserve help, while simultaneously handing my unemployed 25-year-old brother another check for $2,000. What she didn't know was that I had been documenting everything for months, and karma was about to serve the perfect lesson about what real independence actually looks like. This is the story of how years of being the responsible one led to the most satisfying family justice I could have ever imagined. If you've ever been the family scapegoat while watching a golden child get everything handed to them, you'll understand exactly why I did what I did next. But first, let me take you back to where it all began, because you won't believe how deep this favoritism actually ran. Growing up, I was always the one who had everything figured out. While my younger brother Marcus lounged around playing video games, I was the kid doing extra credit, working part-time jobs at 15, and planning my future down to the smallest detail. My parents called it being naturally responsible, but I realize now it was survival. Marcus was the baby, the charmer, the one who could do no wrong even when he was doing everything wrong. When he crashed Dad's car at 17 because he was texting while driving, it was an accident that could happen to anyone. When I got a tiny scratch on Mom's car from a tight parking space, I paid for the entire paint job myself and heard about it for months. By the time I graduated high school as valedictorian with a full scholarship to State University, Marcus was barely passing his classes and had already been suspended twice for vaping on campus. But somehow, at my graduation party, I overheard Mom telling her sister how worried she was about Marcus finding his path, while I was apparently so independent, she never has to worry about me. That phrase would haunt me for the next decade. College was when the pattern really solidified. I worked 20 hours a week while maintaining a 3.8 GPA in engineering. I paid for my own textbooks, my own groceries, even my own gas money to come home for holidays. Meanwhile, Marcus dropped out of community college after one semester, and my parents' response was to increase his monthly allowance and let him move back into his childhood bedroom rent-free. When I graduated and landed my first engineering job, I was proud of my starting salary of $68,000. Finally, I thought my parents would see that their investment in raising an independent daughter had paid off. Instead, Mom's first comment was asking if I could help Marcus with his car payment since I was doing so well now. I should have seen the red flags then, but I was still desperately seeking their approval. The real awakening came 3 years later when I decided to buy my first house. I had saved aggressively, living in a tiny studio apartment and driving a 10-year-old Honda Civic. I had $30,000 for a down payment, excellent credit, and pre-approval for a mortgage. I was so excited to share the news with my family. "That's nice, honey," Mom said when I called to tell her about the house I'd found. "But actually, I'm glad you called. Marcus is really struggling right now, and we were wondering if you could spot him $1,500 for his rent. You know how hard it is for young people these days." Marcus was 25. I had been paying my own rent since I was 19. But that conversation was nothing compared to what I discovered the next week, when everything I thought I knew about my family dynamics came crashing down around me. It started with an innocent comment from my cousin Emma at my grandmother's birthday party. She pulled me aside and whispered, "I can't believe your parents are helping Marcus buy that condo downtown. The one with the rooftop pool?" My mom said they're putting down the whole down payment. $60,000. You must be so excited to have a brother who's finally getting his life together. My blood turned to ice water. "What condo?" I managed to ask, trying to keep my voice steady. Emma looked confused. "The one he's been posting about on Instagram all month? He keeps showing off the view and talking about his investment property." "Wait, you didn't know?" I spent the rest of that party in a bathroom stall, scrolling through Marcus's Instagram with shaking hands. There it was, post after post of him lounging by a rooftop pool, hosting parties in a spacious modern living room, showing off granite countertops and floor-to-ceiling windows. The captions made me sick, living my best life in my new place. Nothing like waking up to this view every morning. Blessed to be building wealth through real estate. Not one mention of my parents. Not one word of gratitude or acknowledgement that he hadn't earned a single dollar of it himself. Meanwhile, I was still driving my Honda Civic and eating ramen noodles to save money for furniture for my modest 3-bedroom ranch house that I was buying entirely on my own. When I confronted Mom the next day, her response was even worse than I expected. "Well, Jessica, you don't need our help," she said, not even denying it. "You've always been so independent. Marcus needs more support to get started in life. Besides, you have a good job and savings. You'll be fine." "Mom, I've been saving for 3 years to buy a house. Marcus has never held a job longer than 6 months. How is giving him a $60,000 condo teaching him responsibility? Don't be selfish, Jessica. Family helps family. And frankly, your attitude right now is exactly why we knew you didn't need the help. You're too independent for your own good sometimes." There it was. The twisted logic that had governed my entire childhood, now laid bare in its full absurdity. My responsibility, my hard work, my independence, all of it was being used as evidence that I deserved less, not more. But Mom wasn't done destroying my illusions yet. "Besides," she continued, "the condo is an investment for all of us. When we're gone, you and Marcus will inherit everything equally anyway. Think of it as an early inheritance for him." That's when I realized this wasn't just about favoritism anymore. This was about my parents fundamentally believing that my brother deserved financial support because he was helpless, while I deserved nothing because I was capable. They had created a system where competence was punished and failure was rewarded. And they expected me to smile and accept it because I was too independent to need love, support, or fairness from my own family. But what I discovered next made the condo situation look like small change, and it changed everything about how I saw my future with this family. 2 weeks after the condo revelation, I was helping my parents clean out their attic when I found a folder that changed everything. It was labeled estate planning in my father's careful handwriting, tucked between old tax returns and insurance documents. I almost put it back unopened. I almost respected their privacy. Thank God I didn't. Inside were updated will documents, financial planning worksheets, and correspondence with their attorney dating back 2 years. As I read through the papers, my hands started shaking so hard I could barely hold them steady. The current will left the family house to Marcus outright. The rental property they owned was also going to Marcus. Their investment accounts, totaling nearly $400,000, were being split, with Marcus receiving 60% and me receiving 40%. The reasoning, written in my mother's handwriting on a note paperclip to the will, made my stomach turn. Marcus will need more support throughout his life. Jessica has always been self-sufficient. But the real knife in my heart was a letter from their financial advisor, dated just 6 months earlier. In it, he questioned the wisdom of leaving so much to Marcus given his history of financial irresponsibility. My parents' response, copied in the folder, was devastating. "We trust that Jessica will always be fine on her own. She's never needed us for anything, so she won't need us after we're gone either. Marcus, on the other hand, will always need family support." There was more. Bank statements showing they had given Marcus over $30,000 in the past 2 years alone, money I was never told about while I was being asked to loan him smaller amounts that were never repaid. Credit card statements showing they had been paying his car insurance, his phone bill, even his streaming service subscriptions, all while telling me I needed to help out more with family expenses when they had unexpected costs. The most painful discovery was a text message conversation between my parents, printed out and filed with their financial documents. It was from the day I had called to tell them about getting promoted to senior engineer with a $20,000 raise. Mom, Jessica got another promotion. More money. Dad, good for her. Did you ask about helping with Marcus's student loans? Mom, not yet. She seemed pretty excited about her success. I'll wait a few days. Dad, she's doing well enough. Marcus is the one who needs support. Mom, exactly. She's always been the strong one. They had turned my strength into a reason to abandon me. My independence had become evidence that I didn't deserve their love, their support, or their investment in my future. Every achievement I had worked for, every responsible choice I had made, every time I had solved my own problems instead of running to them, it had all been building a case against me in their minds. I sat in that dusty attic, surrounded by the evidence of 30 years of systematic favoritism, and something inside me finally snapped. Not into anger, but into perfect, crystalline clarity. If they wanted to see how independent I really was, I was about to give them a masterclass. I carefully photographed every document with my phone, put the folder back exactly where I found it, and climbed down from that attic a completely different person than the one who had gone up. It was time to show my family what true independence looked like and, more importantly, what it cost them. The next 3 months were the most strategic of my life. I had learned something crucial from years of engineering problem solving. Emotion makes you sloppy, but cold, calculated planning gets results. I wasn't going to confront them in the heat of anger. I was going to methodically document everything and then present them with consequences they never saw coming. First, I opened a separate savings account and began tracking every penny I had ever spent on family-related expenses. Every birthday gift, every dinner I had paid for when we went out, every time I had covered Marcus's portion of a family vacation, every loan that had never been repaid. The total was staggering, over $12,000 in the past 5 years alone. I created a detailed spreadsheet with dates, amounts, and purposes. I found old Venmo transactions, credit card statements, even text messages where I had offered to pay for things. I documented every family dinner where I was expected to pick up the check because I was doing well, every holiday gift exchange where I spent 3 times more than I received, every family emergency where I was the only one expected to contribute financially. Then I started recording conversations. My state has single-party consent laws, which meant I could legally record phone calls as long as I was part of the conversation. I began documenting my parents' requests for money, their complaints about Marcus's expenses, and most importantly, their continued insistence that I should help more because I was so independent. The recordings were damning. In one phone call, Mom asked me to contribute $500 toward Marcus's dental work because you know how expensive dental care is, and you're the only one with dental insurance through your job. When I pointed out that Marcus could get a job with benefits, she responded, "Jessica, not everyone is as naturally driven as you are. Some people need more support to find their path." In another call, Dad asked me to co-sign a car loan for Marcus because his credit isn't great, but you've always been so responsible with money. When I hesitated, he added, "Come on, Jess. You know we'd do the same for you if you needed it." The irony was suffocating. They would do the same for me if I needed it, but they had engineered a system where my needs were invisible because I was too competent to have any. Meanwhile, I started pulling back gradually. When they asked for money, I began saying I needed to check my budget instead of immediately agreeing. When family dinners rolled around, I started suggesting we split the check instead of automatically reaching for my wallet. When Marcus needed small loans, I started asking when he planned to pay back the previous ones. The change in their behavior was immediate and telling. Mom started making comments about me being stingy and forgetting where I came from. Dad began questioning whether my job might be making me too focused on money. Marcus, who had never acknowledged my financial help before, suddenly started acting cold and distant when I wasn't immediately available as his personal ATM. But the most revealing moment came when I announced I was taking a 2-week vacation to Europe, something I had been saving for and planning for months. Mom's response was instant. "That seems expensive, Jessica. Are you sure that's wise? Marcus really needs help with his car repairs right now, and here you are spending thousands of dollars on yourself." I had never taken a vacation that cost more than a weekend camping trip. Marcus had been to Cancun twice in the past year, both trips funded by my parents. But somehow, my hard-earned vacation was selfish while his lifestyle was a necessity. That's when I knew I was ready for the final phase of my plan. I scheduled a family dinner at their house for a Sunday afternoon. I told them I had something important to discuss about our family finances and my future. I could hear the excitement in Mom's voice. She probably assumed I was finally ready to offer more substantial help to Marcus, maybe even help with his condo payments. She had no idea I was about to present them with an invoice that would change our relationship forever. I spent the weekend before the dinner putting together a presentation that would have made my engineering professors proud. Charts, graphs, documented evidence, and a proposal that was both perfectly reasonable and absolutely devastating. They wanted to see how independent I could be. They were about to find out exactly what it cost to push away a daughter who had spent 30 years trying to earn their love through responsibility and success. Sunday dinner started normally enough. Mom had made pot roast, Dad was complaining about his golf game, and Marcus was on his phone showing us pictures from his latest weekend trip to Nashville. The irony wasn't lost on me that he was bragging about spending money on vacation while sitting in a house where I was about to be asked to fund his next crisis. "So, Jessica," Mom said as she served dessert, "you mentioned you wanted to talk about family finances. I hope you've been thinking about what we discussed regarding Marcus's situation." Marcus looked up from his phone. "What situation?" "Your mother thinks you could use some help getting caught up on your expenses," Dad said carefully. "And Jessica has been doing very well lately." I pulled out my folder and set it on the dining room table. "Actually, I have been thinking about our family's financial situation quite a lot. I've put together some information I think everyone should see." I opened the folder and pulled out the first document, my detailed expense tracking spreadsheet, printed in full color with graphs and charts. This is a comprehensive breakdown of every dollar I've contributed to this family over the past 5 years, I began, sliding copies across the table. Gifts, loans, dinners, vacations, emergencies, and miscellaneous support. The total comes to $12,347. Mom's face went pale. "Jessica, what are you doing?" "I'm being independent, Mom. Just like you always said I was." I pulled out the next set of documents. These are bank statements showing the money you've given Marcus during the same period. $31,800 in direct payments, plus the $60,000 condo down payment, plus ongoing monthly support for insurance, phone bills, and other expenses. Marcus grabbed his copy of the papers. "Where did you get these?" "These are private. I found them in the attic, along with your updated will and estate planning documents." I pulled out the next stack. "Speaking of which, here's a breakdown of your current inheritance plan, which leaves Marcus with approximately 70% of your assets based on current valuations." The silence in that room was deafening. Dad cleared his throat. "Jessica, we can explain." "Oh, I think the explanations are quite clear," I interrupted, pulling out my phone. "In fact, I have several recorded conversations where you explain your reasoning perfectly." I played the first recording, Mom asking me to contribute to Marcus's dental work while explaining that he needed more support because he wasn't naturally driven like me. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "You recorded us?" "I documented our conversations, yes. For clarity." I played the second recording, Dad asking me to co-sign Marcus's car loan while assuring me they'd do the same for me if I needed it, despite the evidence showing they had never done the same for me. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "This is insane, Jessica. You're acting like a crazy person. I looked at him calmly. I'm acting like someone who finally understands her value in this family. Which brings me to my proposal. I pulled out the final document, a formal invoice on professional letterhead. This is a bill for services rendered, I announced. $12,347 for financial support provided to this family, plus interest calculated at the same rate you'd pay on a personal loan. Total amount due, $15,200. The explosion was immediate. You can't be serious, Mom shouted. You're billing your own family? Family helps family, Mom. Those were your exact words. This is me helping by teaching you the actual cost of my independence. Dad was turning red. This is outrageous, Jessica. We raised you, fed you, put a roof over your head, and you did the same for Marcus. Yet somehow he deserves ongoing financial support while I deserve to provide it. I'm simply asking to be paid for the work I've been doing as Marcus's unofficial financial sponsor. Marcus was staring at the papers in disbelief. You're seriously going to charge us money? Your own brother. Marcus, you've received over $90,000 from this family in 5 years. I've received requests for loans. If that arrangement has worked so well, surely you can understand why I might want to be compensated for my contributions too. Mom was crying now. How can you be so cruel? We're your family. And yet you planned your entire estate around the assumption that I don't need family support because I'm too independent. Well, congratulations. You created exactly the daughter you wanted. I stood up and gathered my papers. The invoice is due in 30 days. I accept cash, check, or bank transfer. And just so we're clear about my independence going forward, I will no longer be available for loans, financial emergencies, or subsidizing anyone else's lifestyle. You can't just cut us off. Dad sputtered. I'm not cutting you off. I'm treating you exactly the way you've treated me, as adults who are responsible for your own financial decisions. Marcus is 25 years old. If he needs money, he can get a job. If you want to support him, that's your choice. But I'm officially retired from the position of family ATM. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and one more thing. I've decided to take that independence you're so proud of to its logical conclusion. I'm moving across the country next month. I got offered a position in Seattle with a 30% salary increase. I accepted it yesterday. The stunned silence followed me all the way to my car. As I drove away, I could see them through the dining room window, still sitting around the table with my documents spread in front of them, finally forced to confront the math of their favoritism. For the first time in my life, I had shown them exactly what it cost to take me for granted. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. Within 24 hours, my phone was buzzing constantly. Text messages, voicemails, missed calls. The family group chat that had been quiet for months suddenly exploded with activity, but I had muted it after the first few messages made it clear that my relatives had been brought into the drama. The first wave of responses was pure anger. Dad left a voicemail calling my behavior disrespectful and manipulative. Mom sent a long text about how disappointed she was in me for weaponizing family love. Marcus's contribution was shorter, but more colorful, involving several words I won't repeat here. But then something interesting happened. The anger gave way to panic. 3 days after the dinner, Mom called in tears. Jessica, please. We need to talk about this reasonably. You can't really be serious about moving to Seattle. I am serious, Mom. The job starts in 6 weeks. But what about us? What about family dinners and holidays, and what about them? You've made it clear that my value to this family is financial. Since I'm retiring from that role, I figured I should relocate somewhere that appreciates my independence. The second wave was bargaining. Dad called to work out a compromise. He offered to pay half the invoice if I would stop this nonsense and stay local. When I declined, he increased the offer to 3/4. When I still declined, he asked what it would take to fix this situation. You can't fix 30 years of systematic favoritism with a check, Dad. This isn't about the money. It's about the fact that you created a family dynamic where my competence is evidence that I don't deserve love or support. That's not true, Jessica. We love you. You love the version of me that solves problems and asks for nothing. You've never shown any interest in loving the version of me that might need support or encouragement or just basic fairness. The third wave was the most telling. They tried to use Marcus as ammunition. You're really going to abandon your brother? Mom asked during one particularly heated phone call. He looks up to you, Jessica. He needs his sister. Marcus has never needed me, Mom. He's needed my wallet. There's a difference. That's not fair. What's not fair is expecting me to subsidize someone else's lifestyle while being told I'm too independent to deserve the same support. What's not fair is discovering that my own parents have written me out of their will because they assume I'll be fine on my own. What's not fair is 30 years of being punished for being responsible. But the real moment of truth came 2 weeks later when Marcus showed up at my apartment unannounced. We need to talk, he said, pushing past me into my living room. About what, Marcus? About you destroying our family over money. I stared at him. I'm destroying our family? Mom's been crying every day. Dad's not sleeping. And for what? Because you're jealous that they helped me out. Helped you out. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Marcus, they bought you a condo. They've given you $90,000 in 5 years. I've been asked to contribute to your expenses while you post Instagram stories from vacation. I never asked you to pay for anything. You never had to ask. It was just expected. The responsible daughter helping the struggling son. Except the struggling son is 25 years old and has never tried to struggle less. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Look, maybe they have helped me more than they should have. But that doesn't mean you should punish all of us. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply refusing to continue participating in a system where my success is used as evidence that I don't deserve support. But what am I supposed to do now? They're talking about making me get a job and pay my own car insurance and Marcus. I interrupted him gently. Listen to what you just said. He stopped mid-sentence, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of awareness cross his face. You're 25 years old, and you're panicking about the possibility of paying your own car insurance. Do you understand how that sounds? He was quiet for a long moment. I guess I never thought about it that way. Our parents taught you that you deserve to be taken care of, and they taught me that I deserve to do the taking care of. But neither of those lessons was doing either of us any favors. Marcus left that day without the angry confrontation he had planned. And 2 days later, something unprecedented happened. He got a job. Not a great job, not a career-defining position, but a full-time job with benefits at a local marketing company. When he called to tell me about it, his voice was different. Smaller, but also steadier. I know this doesn't fix everything, he said. But I wanted you to know that I'm trying to figure some things out. It wasn't an apology, but it was acknowledgement. And it was more than I had gotten from my parents, who were still calling my invoice emotional blackmail, while simultaneously proving my point about their inability to see me as anything other than a provider. The final piece of justice came when I got my first paycheck from the Seattle job. It was everything I had hoped for and more. As I deposited it into my account, I realized something profound. For the first time in my adult life, every dollar I earned was mine to spend on my own dreams and goals. I wasn't saving money to loan to Marcus. I wasn't budgeting for family emergencies that somehow never affected anyone but me. I wasn't calculating how much I could afford to contribute to someone else's lifestyle. I was finally, truly independent. And it felt like freedom. 6 months later, I'm writing this from my apartment in Seattle, looking out at the Puget Sound with a cup of coffee that costs more than I used to allow myself to spend on luxury in a week. The job is everything I hoped it would be, the city is beautiful, And for the first time in my adult life, I'm building a social circle based on mutual interest rather than family obligation. The invoice, predictably, was never paid. My parents chose to frame it as an unreasonable demand rather than confront the mathematical reality of their favoritism. But that was fine with me. The invoice was never really about the money. It was about forcing them to see the cost of their choices in black and white. Marcus and I text occasionally now. He's still working at the marketing company and has started paying his own rent, his own car insurance, and his own phone bill. He told me last month that he's thinking about taking some evening classes to finish his degree. It's not a dramatic transformation, but it's progress, and it's his. My parents and I have settled into a polite but distant relationship. We talk every few weeks, careful conversations about weather and work that avoid any mention of money or family dynamics. Mom still occasionally mentions how much they miss me, but she's stopped asking when I'm coming home. I think they're beginning to understand that I am home, just not with them. The most unexpected outcome has been how much I've learned about healthy relationships since moving here. I've made friends who celebrate my successes without immediately calculating what I can contribute to their problems. I've started dating someone who finds my independence attractive rather than threatening. I've discovered what it feels like to be valued for who I am rather than what I can provide. Last week, a coworker asked me to help her move apartments, and when I agreed, she immediately followed up with offers to pay for pizza and a detailed plan for how she would return the favor. The casual assumption that help should be reciprocal, that support should flow both ways, was so foreign to my family experience that it almost brought me to tears. I've also learned that real independence isn't about never needing anyone. It's about having the self-worth to expect fair treatment and the strength to enforce boundaries when you don't get it. My parents taught me to be financially independent, but emotionally dependent on their approval. Breaking free from that cycle required recognizing that I couldn't control their choices, but I could control my response to them. Would I do it all again? Absolutely. The confrontation, the invoice, the move, all of it. Because for the first time in my life, I'm living according to my own values rather than trying to earn love from people who had already decided I didn't need it. The hardest part wasn't standing up to them. It was accepting that they might never see me as anything other than the independent daughter who didn't need family support. But their inability to love me the way I needed to be loved doesn't diminish my worth. It just clarifies theirs. I'm not angry anymore. Anger requires investment in changing someone else's behavior. And I've learned that my energy is better spent on building the life I actually want rather than fighting for scraps of appreciation from people who fundamentally misunderstood what love looks like. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had just accepted their dynamic, kept loaning money to Marcus, kept being the family ATM while watching him receive the support I craved. I would have been comfortable, probably. Financially secure, definitely. But I would have spent the rest of my life subsidizing other people's dreams while convincing myself that my own didn't matter. Instead, I chose to show them what real independence looks like. Not the independence of someone who's too strong to need support, but the independence of someone who's strong enough to refuse unfair treatment. And that has made all the difference. The message here is universal. Being capable doesn't mean you deserve less love or support from your family. If you've spent years being the responsible one while watching others get handed opportunities, know that your competence is not evidence that you don't need care. It's evidence that you deserve family members who appreciate your strength without exploiting it. Real family support flows both ways. Real love doesn't come with the hidden price tag of being the family bank. And real independence means having the courage to walk away from people who can only value what you provide, not who you are. Which part of Jessica's story surprised you the most? Have you ever been the family member everyone expects to help but no one thinks to support? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding your worth and setting boundaries that actually stick.